Coming up today, members of Korea's ruling party are meeting to decide whether embattled floor leader Yoo Seong-min should stay on or step down. Greece submits no new proposals to secure a bailout deal ahead of a key meeting of European leaders in Brussels. The eurozone gives Athens until Sunday to come up with a solid plan. Plus, stuck in the worst drought in decades, monsoon rain brings some much-needed relief to the southern part of Korea, but the central region isn't forecast to get much more than a sprinkling. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Wednesday, the 8th of July. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. We begin today at the National Assembly, where the fate of embattled ruling Saenuri Party floor leader Yoo Seong-min is being decided at the party's general meeting, which is currently happening in Seoul. For more on this story, we connect live with our National Assembly correspondent Park Ji-won. So, Ji-won, they are still discussing this matter.
Yes, Mark. The general meeting, which involves all of the party's lawmakers, started at around 9 a.m. this morning. Well, since then, they've been in the meeting, which is not open to the press. Yoo Seong-min did not participate in the meeting, which was convened by the party's Supreme Council. Many ruling party lawmakers think his resignation is unavoidable, considering the sour relations between the presidential office and the party. But many other lawmakers object to him stepping down just because of a negative comment by the president. Well, the two sides are at odds, and some argue that initial passage of a now veto revision to the National Assembly Act, which Yoo spearheaded, is not the sole responsibility of Yoo alone, but a responsibility shared by the Supreme Council, and its members should resign before making a political scapegoat of Yoo. Well, so far, it's not yet known how the decision will be made, whether by vote or by resolution. But Saenuri Party lawmakers say they are determined to end the debate today, whatever the outcome might be.
And Ji-won, the July extraordinary session began today as well. Tell us more about that.
Well, Mark, lawmakers are hoping to pass a much-needed budget settlement that will be used to stabilize the economy hit hard by the MERS outbreak and a recent drought. But it remains to be seen whether the session will produce any concrete results, given the conflicts both within the rebel parties and within the parties themselves. I will bring you more on this story in our later newscast. Back to you.
Now, a special parliamentary committee for MERS countermeasures will hold its first hearing this Wednesday to probe the government on its heavily criticised response to the outbreak. Health Minister Moon Hyung-pyo and Vice Ministers from the Public Safety and Education Ministries are expected to be in attendance this afternoon. The committee members will grill them about the country's failure to contain the spread of the virus in the early stages and also demand answers for the government's initial lax judgment and response. The special committee will also quiz Seoul Mayor Park Monsoon and Lee Jae-yong, chairman of Samsung Life Public Welfare Foundation, which oversees the Samsung Medical Center in southern Seoul. Now, this hospital has come under fire as nearly half of the country's MERS transmissions occurred there. On Friday, the committee will question officials from Pyeongtaek St. Mary's Hospital, where the first MERS case was confirmed. Officials from the Samsung Medical Center will be in the hot seat next Tuesday. Following up on that with an update on the outbreak of Middle East respiratory syndrome here in Korea, and the nation has reported its first MERS-related death in 8 days. This has raised the death toll to 34. With the latest death, the fatality rate of MERS in Korea has risen to 18.3%, but that is still, we must stress, much lower than the global average of 40%. The total number of people diagnosed with the virus has remained unchanged for 3 straight days now at 186. Of that number, 33 remain in hospital, with 9 still in unstable conditions. The number of fully recovered patients has risen to 119. However, the number of people under quarantine has risen to 811 from 674 the day before. The Bank of Korea is expected to slash the country's growth forecast for this year to the 2% range at a monetary policy meeting set for this Thursday. Now, since April, the central bank has been targeting growth of 3.1%. Economic institutes have released new estimates, and they are ranging from between 2.7 to 2.9%. Just last month, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Joo-yeol said the unfavorable effects of the MERS outbreak could force them to lower the growth rate forecast. However, Korea came up with an almost $20 billion stimulus program to try and cope with the impact of MERS and to maintain the nation's economic growth forecast in the 3% range. Now, the central bank has already cut its benchmark interest rate to a record low of 1.5%. Citing the negative economic impact of the MERS outbreak. That figure is expected to remain unchanged. The International Monetary Fund has urged the US Federal Reserve to postpone its planned interest rate hike until 2016. It says there are political and economic issues globally that could hurt US growth, adding that a rise should only come after signs of wage or price inflation. Kim Min-ji reports.
The IMF has warned the U.S. Federal Reserve to keep its rate increase on hold until next year. In its annual analysis of the U.S. economy, the IMF said a global slowdown in economic growth, together with political and economic upheaval in countries like Greece and Ukraine, could hurt U.S. growth down the road. It said a rate hike should be put off until there are signs of a pickup in wages and inflation. Analysts have forecast a rate increase in September, although recent economic data had watered down expectations.
While many watchers expect the Fed to move sometime this year, if the Greek debt crisis is not resolved and continues to run, it will have a significant impact on Europe and the US. I think the Fed will probably postpone the rate hike.
The IMF suggested holding rates at near zero into the first half of next year, with a gradual increase after that. The Fed has held the rate at near zero since the global financial crisis in 2008. Fed Chairwoman Janet Yellen had earlier signaled the central bank could raise rates in the coming months if the economy was growing steadily. But the world's largest economy only expanded 0.7% in the first quarter, and growth projections for the whole year aren't all that better. The IMF has cut its growth forecast for the U.S. economy to 2.5%, down from April's 3% projection. The OECD has also revised down its outlook to 2%. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, on to the latest developments in the Greek debt crisis. And Greece failed to submit any fresh bailout proposals to an emergency summit of eurozone leaders on Tuesday, leaving the country in limbo once again. Greece's fate is likely to be decided on Sunday, when eurozone leaders have agreed to assemble once again. Handan reports.
Greece may have earned a bit of time, but things aren't looking much better for the troubled country. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras showed up to a Eurozone summit held in Brussels on Tuesday without a new aid proposal, disappointing the already skeptical Eurozone partners. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, upon arrival at the summit, reiterated that Greece still has not met the basic requirements for further negotiations.
After the expiry of the second programme and after a more than clear no in the Greek referendum, there is still no basis for negotiations in the ESM programme framework. In other words, without solidarity, there is no possibility to help. Without solidarity and without reforms, it is not possible to go where we want to go.
After the meeting, EU leaders gave Athens an ultimatum: come up with a conclusive proposal for reforms before Sunday, when another EU summit will be held. Sunday's meeting could decide the debt-ridden country's fate, as Eurozone leaders are expected to make a final decision on whether to approve a third bailout for Greece based on its new proposal. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras sounded rather upbeat after Tuesday's meeting and said that the discussion had taken place in a positive climate. He added the country aims to conclude the process by the end of the week. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker, who had sought to keep Greece in the euro, was more cautious.
The Commission is prepared for everything. We have a Grexit scenario prepared in detail. We have a scenario as far as humanitarian aid is concerned, and we have, and that's the scenario I most prefer, a scenario how to deal with the problem now, keeping Greece as a member of the euro area. I'm strongly against Grexit, but I can't prevent it if the Greek government is not doing what we are expecting the Greek government to do.
With Greek banks down to their last few days of cash and the European Central Bank turning the screw on their funding to Greece, time is running out. Tsipras will address the European Parliament on Wednesday morning local time, when leaders will continue the discussion on Greece's fate. Handaeun, Arirang News.
The US Army is reportedly planning to reduce the size of its fighting force by 40,000 troops over the next 2 years. USA Today reported on Tuesday that the Army also plans to cut its civilian employees by 17,000. The cut will downsize active duty troops from the current 490,000 to 450,000, and that's the smallest number since 1940. The cost-cutting plan has been on the table for some time, but this is the first time officials have confirmed that it will go ahead. An official announcement on the specific units affected will come as early as Thursday, but citing military sources in Washington, Seoul-based Yonhap news agency says US troop numbers in South Korea will remain the same. North Korean leader Kim Jongun paid tribute to his grandfather and North Korea founder Kim Il-sung on this Wednesday to commemorate the 21st anniversary of his death. North Korea's state-run Korean Central News Agency said the young leader visited the Gumsusan Palace of the Sun at midnight, where the late founder was laid to rest in 1994. Kim was accompanied by senior military officials, including Hwang Byung-seo, the director of the General Political Department of the Korean People's Army, and Park Young-sik, who is believed to be the regime's new defense chief. The anniversary comes amid reports that the young leader's so-called politics of fear is leading to a growing number of defections by mid-ranking officials. Now, a new survey has shown that Koreans would really love to have more children, but they are unable to because of the financial burden of raising them. The think tank that compiled the report says the government needs to act fast to boost Korea's chronically low birth rate. Son Jung-in has more.
The Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs released a report on Wednesday on the value of children. It analyzed the result of a survey on more than 18,000 respondents from 8 countries, including the United States, China, Britain, Japan, and Korea. The questions were divided into positive and negative categories, asking respondents to rate their level of agreement on a scale of 1 to 5 on statements related to parents' happiness, social standing, financial burden, and career chances. Koreans showed an ambivalent attitude on the survey, rating highly on both opposing categories. They strongly agreed that watching children grow up was life's greatest joy, with a score of 4.26 points. They also shared the view that having children increases people's social standing in society, with 3.17 points, the second highest following Sweden. However, at the same time, Koreans strongly believed that children were a financial burden and interfered too much with their freedom, recording the third and second highest score respectively among the countries surveyed. Officials at the institute said that while the country's birth rate stands at just 1.24 children per woman, Koreans' ideal number of children was 2.7, meaning they want more kids but are restricted by the financial burden of raising them. The officials added that Korean government should strengthen its measures to lessen the economic burden of child rearing in order to boost the birth rate. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Now, it's monsoon season here in Korea, with rain falling over most of the country and bringing some much-needed relief from the recent drought that has been gripping the Korean peninsula. Now, a slight drizzle is expected throughout the day here in the capital, Seoul, but it's a different story down south. A heavy rain warning has been issued for Busan and Jeju Island, and strong winds and thunderstorms are expected in other parts of the southern region. On Thursday, Gyeongsang-Namdo province is expected to be hit the hardest by the rain, with roughly 100 millimeters falling, and you'll still need an umbrella in Seoul on Thursday, but it will mostly be on and off light showers. And those are the stories we've been following on this Wednesday afternoon here in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out our website, arirang.co.kr/news, and do download our smartphone application. Goodbye.